us in Crosstalk. I'm convinced, folks, that the topic today is one that you need to be made aware of as to what is happening in this world, and certainly to be observant of the times in which we live, to know what plans are underway, what things are happening, even behind the scenes. Many times, things we just have no idea what is going on, and then the research starts and delve into it, and it's quite alarming as to where things are happening and going in this world. We know, according to Scripture, that one day there is going to be a worldwide religion. There is going to be those who follow one known as Antichrist, and what many see may not be aware of, that there are efforts going on in this present day to actually bring together, harmonize all religions together, except it seems like biblical Christianity is not a part of that. We see interfaith dialogue that's been on the increase, even between major denominations, and interfaith dialogue with Islam we have seen over and over again. We're seeing religious communities coming together for purposes of social justice. And what you may not be aware of is that the 10th World Assembly of Religions for Peace recently convened August 20th through the 23rd in Germany, attended by some 900 global religious leaders and delegates. Religions for Peace International claims to be the world's largest and most representative coalition of religious and indigenous communities operating in over 90 countries. So what's coming from this assembly? What are they standing for? What are they agreeing to? You need to know what's going on, and we invite you to stay tuned and listen today as we speak with Alex Newman. He's an international freelance journalist. He's an author, an educator, public speaker, a consultant. His articles frequently appear in The New American. He writes for Freedom Project Media. He has been hosting numerous seminars across the summer months on educational issues. Alex, so good to have you back with us here on Crosstalk.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Jim. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate your show, so it's really a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
So let's talk about this World Assembly of Religions for Peace. Who exactly is this?
Well, they claim to represent basically all the religions of the world, and they even got some American evangelical, self-proclaimed evangelical Christians to participate, but you have a lot of Catholic officials, you have Orthodox officials, you even have, as I mentioned, some evangelical officials from Europe and from the United States. Then you have a lot of Muslim leaders from different strands within Islam. You have a lot of Buddhist leaders. You have Shinto leaders. You have self-proclaimed pagans, people who are worshiping ancestors and spirits and these types of things. Just straight up heathens. And they all come together, and they've been doing this for a while now. And the most recent meeting that just happened in Lindau, Germany, just in late August, came up with this final declaration, and they'll tell you who they are and what they want. I mean, essentially, they want the UN's vision for humanity to be imposed on all of humanity, and they're putting this in kind of religious terminology and trying to make it acceptable to religious people. But it's a very, very serious thing, and it went almost completely unreported in the American media, so I'm just so happy to have the opportunity to talk about this.
Well, and as you pointed out, this is not the new kid on the block. This was their 10th World Assembly, and that's not 10th annual. They actually meet, I think it's every 5 to 6 or 7 years, something like that. So this has been underway for many years.
Yes, they were established as far back as the 70s, I believe, and so they've been growing in influence and prestige. They've been attracting more and more religious leaders to themselves, and I think with Pope Francis, who really has been, I think, the boldest of all the popes in history in terms of embracing some of this agenda openly, they really got a kind of a shot in the arms, and an adrenaline boost, if you will, in terms of advancing this agenda. And I encourage people to go read the final declaration, because it's very, very blunt what they're up to.
And by the way, they just announced a new Secretary General. Do we know anything about this individual?
We do, yes. In fact, the outgoing Secretary General is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, which of course is one of the premier deep state kind of globalist institutions in the United States. One of the inspectors who left this organization after 16 years, U.S. Admiral Chester Ward, he said their primary goal is to submerge American sovereignty and put the United States under a all-powerful one-world government, is the exact terminology that he used in his book about this. And so the outgoing guy was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. The new lady who's coming in Dr. Azza Karam, I believe is how you pronounce her name. Her big claim to fame was her work with the UN Population Fund. And I think that in and of itself is so revealing, because God was very clear about the issue of children. God says children are a blessing. God says people ought to be fruitful and multiply. Well, the UN Population Fund takes essentially the exact opposite view. People are bad for the planet. We need to reduce the population of human beings by any means necessary. And in fact, in our Congress, back in 2012, there was testimony exposing this UN agency directly working with the mass murdering communist dictatorship on forced abortions, to implement this one-child policy. It's since become the two-child policy. But if you go over the limit of children that the government says you can have there, they will kidnap the woman and strap her down to a table, even if she's 2 weeks away from giving birth, and murder that baby. And so the new lady who's in charge of this Religions for Peace literally comes out of that background. And that should tell us a lot about what this gathering represents.
Well, it ought to, but what a conflict, because they talk in this document, which we're going to get into, but they talk about choking the web of life. What is more choking of the web of life than killing an innocent baby? But they're not taking a stand against abortion here.
That's exactly right. And, I've spent a lot of time looking at the UN Population Fund, and, I think you don't even have to be a Bible-believing Christian to recognize some of this stuff is just wrong. They put out a report a few years ago saying that there's too many Africans out there. Oh, my goodness, all these Kenyan women having all these babies. What are we going to do? We got to figure out a way to reduce the number of Kenyans. And you think, where do these people come off telling Kenyans how many children they can or can't have, as if Kenyans were some kind of plague on the planet? I think sensible people find that kind of audacity really grotesque. And yet, the person they chose to lead this supposedly religious organization, this alliance of religions, comes out of that background. It's just very, very bizarre. But I do think it's very revealing, and so I'm glad that in that sense we can discern a lot about what this represents just from looking at the people who are running it.
Well, we're speaking with Alex Newman today. He's an international freelance journalist and researcher. And Alex, at this 10th World Assembly of Religions for Peace, they actually developed what they call the Peace Charter for Forgiveness and Reconciliation. What can you tell us about this Peace Charter?
Yeah, it's interesting, I think, because they take some concepts that everybody would agree. Especially Christians, the necessity of forgiveness is just stressed over and over again in Scripture. And, not only Christians recognize the value of forgiveness, so they take these ideas that people naturally feel an affinity for. Peace is another one. So peace and forgiveness and reconciliation, everybody agrees with those concepts. And then they take that and they weaponize it and they use it to advance essentially globalism, socialism, totalitarianism, wrapped up in religious garb. And so if you read these documents that came out of this meeting, what you'll find is they start off by taking these principles that almost everybody would support. How could you be against forgiveness? How could you be against peace? And then they imply that if you don't agree with all the rest of their policy ideas, that you somehow don't like peace, or you somehow don't support forgiveness. And that's lunacy. And yet that's exactly what's happening here.
Well, folks, keep in mind, as it says in 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 3, "For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." Alex, as we take a look at this document, I have read through this preamble, and as I read through this, the very first thing that goes through my mind, this document, is this is a push towards socialism. I mean, they talk about common action, common good, the crushing weight of extreme poverty versus those who are wealthy. They speak of a shared well-being. Am I reading too much into this, or is this really a socialistic agenda?
I think it is self-evidently a socialistic agenda. I think you're right on the money, Jim. And if you look in these declarations, there's actually several references, direct references. It's not even hidden, behind nice language, in support of the UN Agenda 2030, or the Sustainable Development Goals, as they have it. They openly express their support for this several times. And if you actually read Agenda 2030, it's actually not a very long document. They talk about Mother Earth, and goal number 10, for example, is explicitly global socialism. I mean, if you read goal number 10, there's 17 of these goals. Goal number 10 tells you that we have to reduce inequality within and among countries. And then they tell you that's only possible if we share the wealth, if we redistribute the wealth. And now they're saying, in plain English, National Socialism is not enough anymore. Right? We can't just redistribute the wealth at a national level. Now we need global wealth redistribution. And, that sounds fine and good to somebody who maybe has no understanding of history, who maybe has no understanding of biblical principles, right? When God said, thou shalt not steal, he didn't say, but it's okay to steal if you can round up a certain number of voters and get a guy to go steal your neighbor's property and then give it to you. In that case, we'll make an exception. No, God said, thou shalt not steal, right? Very, very plain English right there. And yet these people want to institutionalize thievery. And what makes it even more grotesque is that they play on people's emotions, because they want us to have this image in our head that they're going to go take money from the billionaires and the robber barons and redistribute it to hungry people in Africa, when we know they've been doing this for decades. Nothing could be further from the truth. They take money from the poor and middle class in advanced countries like the United States, and then they redistribute it to their Swiss bank accounts and to their dictator allies in the third world, who've literally impoverished the third world pursuing these exact same socialistic policies. So, if socialism worked, it would be one thing, but we've seen socialism tried over and over and over again. I mean, Venezuela is a good example right now. We have Cuba, we have North Korea. How many times do we need to see this